We're actually having very constructive negotiations right now with the IOUs as we speak right now. Very constructive. They want issue of flexibility. The measure provides for flexibility with regards to renewable generation, say, for example, from Wyoming, which is a red state. If you can bring wind in power from Wyoming and it's connected to the grid, Cal ISO, it's acceptable. If you want to bring in and harness the power of the sun from Utah, another red state who wants to export their energy, as well as Arizona, another red state who want to export the power of the sun, if you're connected to the grid, Cal ISO, you can export that to California and we can import it. These are 3 red states. We're getting into the game when it comes to renewable sources. I won't get into the issue of overgeneration, if you will, demand, storage, and energy efficiency, but if you have any questions on those issues, again, I'd be more than happy to explain and go into further detail forensically in the weeds on the issue of overgeneration with regards to the Cal ISO and demand storage as we relate to peak hours when the wind is not blowing and when the sun is not shining. And what do we do to make sure that we provide energy at a low cost to all the ratepayers in the state of California? Colleagues, this is doable. And a couple points lastly I want to make is we talked about coastal elitism. And part of my speech when I opened up my comments was about Salvador Mendoza. And it was about Roy, and it was about the Jose and Lorraine Mendoza. And I do believe strongly, I believe in the arguments, that if you had the financial wherewithal to drive a Tesla, and if you actually drew down on a tax credit for Tesla, is that actually fair? Or should we make sure every individual, irrespective of who you are and where you come from, the color of your skin and your region, whether you live in the Imperial or Central Valley, in Compton or East Oakland or East LA, that they have access to credits that they can bundle and they can drive themselves, or Salinas or Watsonville, where they can drive a vehicle that's affordable, that's electric or a hybrid plug-in, if you will. It's about the policies that we enact on this floor that democratize this process so we do away with the marketplace that today has not corrected the inequities. That's the power of this legislature. Democrats and Republicans working together to move with a sense of intentionality. Because a couple of theses, there was a thesis that was put forth, I think, that I give credence to, that the marketplace, as of today, hasn't yet been able to correct these inequities. And we talk about winners and losers, but I think that's a canard, because winners and losers already have been selected and chosen. No one talks about the massive subsidies that the fossil fuel industry receives on an annual basis. In fact, just last month, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, produced a report that 6.5% of global GDP, 6.5% of global GDP is dedicated both directly as well as indirectly as a subsidy to the fossil fuel industry. That's $5 trillion. $5 trillion. Those are subsidies. And those subsidies through policies, especially at the federal level, have been selected to pick a winner and a loser. So this is about economic growth, because as to date, we have created 55,000 brand new jobs in the solar industry. We are projected by the end of this calendar year to create another 10,000. So it'll be 65,000 new jobs. We talk about the economically depressed areas, which are absolutely accurate. Central Valley, Imperial Valley. But to date, I have not seen the fossil fuel industry or any other industry put forth any reasonable economic growth policy for the working men and women of these areas. But when it comes to renewable energy, that is the future. And those jobs are real and those jobs are tangible. And that can bring out, working class people out from poverty, the stubborn poverty that exists, into the middle class. We're talking about creating a new economy for tomorrow because the status quo, quite frankly, is not working. And our children in the Central Valley, whether you're Republican or Democrat, in the Imperial Valley, are breathing into their lungs these harmful toxins and pollutants, which we as taxpayers are subsidizing through the emergency room visits. So it's nonsensical that we continue with the status quo. Now, lastly, again, last weekend we had Memorial Day weekend. Memorial Day weekend in Kern County. in the city of Bakersfield, to be exact, Memorial Day weekend, a gallon of gasoline was $3.70. A month ago, it was $3.48. But now it just dropped to $3.66. In Fresno, a month ago, a gallon of gasoline was $3.53. That's regular. Memorial Day weekend, it increased to $3.60. Now all of a sudden, it just dropped back down again to $3.50. And I have city after city after city and county after county after county. Why does gasoline rise all of a sudden during Memorial Day weekend? Well, one can go to Economics 101, supply and demand. I get the supply. Why? No. I get the demand because people are going to travel, during the course of the weekend. But the supply is quite fascinating because it's one of the greatest conundrums that we have today, one of the great mysteries of the world. We have the Bermuda Triangle, we have Roswell, Area 51, and we also have the great mystery. How are gasoline prices actually formulated in the state of California? And why do gasoline prices rise through the roof all of a sudden when there's a refinery maintenance shutdown or there's an explosion at a certain center? So this is about our taxpayers. This is about our constituents. This is about our public health. This is about economic growth. More than happy to work with my Republican colleagues so we can put something together that's bipartisan. They did it in Lancaster, and you have a mayor, a Republican mayor, arch-conservative city, where all city council members are arch-conservatives, Republicans in Texas that have moved forward with the renewable policy because dollars and cents, it makes sense. With that, Mr. President, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator De Leon. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen. Aye. Anderson. No. Bates. No. Bell. Aye. Berryhill. No. Block. Aye. Canella. No. De Leon. Aye. Fuller. Gaines.
No.
No. Galgiani. Glazer. Aye. Hall. Aye. Hancock. Aye. Hernandez. Aye. Hertzberg. Aye. Hill. Aye. Wesso. Aye. Huff. No. Jackson. Aye. Lada. Aye. Leno. Aye. Leva. Aye. Liu. Aye. McGuire. Aye. Mendoza. Aye. Mitchell. Aye. Monning. Aye. Morlock. No. Morrell. No. Wynn. No. Nielsen. Pan. Aye. Pavley. Aye. Roth. Runner. No. Stone. No. Vidak. No. Wykowski. Aye. Wolk. Wolk, aye. Fuller,
All
no.
absent members.
Galgiani. No. Nielsen. Roth.
Ayes 24, noes 14. Measure passes. Members, we've got a lot of bills to get through today. If you could help me move things along, because I think we're going to try to end up Thursday, and our goal, I think, today is 50, and if we can go beyond that, that means we have a little less work for Thursday. So with that in mind, I still want to make sure you have debate, and just try to keep it brief and concise, and we'll keep things moving. File item 42. Senator De Leon, are you ready to bring this item up?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, it'll be
Secretary,
very
please
short.
read.
Senate Bill 185 by Senator De Leon and acrolein to public retirement systems.
And I'll be very short
Senator
with this
De Leon.
measure. I rise to present SB 185, investing with values and responsibility. This measure requires our public employee retirement systems, both CalPERS as well as CalSTRS, to divest their holdings in thermal coal companies and prohibit new investments in coal. Mr. President, as well as colleagues, the age of coal, quite frankly, is coming to an end. The fact is, investing in coal is simply not worth the risk. With each passing day, the writing on the wall becomes clearer and clearer. Our policies, our technologies, our global markets are moving in concert away from coal. But don't take my word for it. Instead, listen to Robert Murray, founder and CEO of Murray Energy, the third largest coal company in the nation. He said just recently, and I quote, "Every major coal company in this country is either going to be broken up or sold or in bankruptcy," end quote. Meanwhile, shares in Arch Coal, the second largest coal company in the nation, averaged less than $1 in May and were trading for just 55 cents last week, putting the company at risk of being delisted from the New York Stock Exchange. Bottom line, so we can accelerate this, the reality is coal is a bad investment. for our pensioners in the state of California because of the values, but also, too, it sends a very clear message that we cannot import coal into the state of California and continuously impact the lives of children and their lungs in the state of California. Mr. President, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator De Leon. Senator Stone, followed by Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I respectively rise in opposition to SB 185. Article 16, Section 7 of the California Constitution, as approved by the voters in Prop 162, provides investing and divesting autonomy to CalPERS and CalSTRS, meaning the legislature has no investment authority over CalPERS and CalSTRS. CalPERS invested $1 billion in green energy in 2013 and rationalized their loss of most of the investment by stating publicly, it's a noble way to lose money. The pension funds have a fiduciary duty to their members. The legislature should not meddle in their investments. Clean coal accounts for approximately 37% of the electricity that's produced in the United States. 70% of world steel production depends on coal feedstock. Coal is the world's most abundant and widely distributed fossil fuel source. According to CalPERS, they invest nearly $6.5 billion in coal and coal-related companies. CalSTRS invests over $800 million. At a time where our combined CalPERS and CalSTRS unfunded pension liabilities approximate $300 billion, does it honestly make sense to divest in something that is an important piece of our economy and energy independence? We cannot ignore the role of coal in providing affordable, reliable energy for Americans. Coal equates to lower electricity costs. States that rely on coal pay 33% less electricity than other states. Our electricity rates are already higher, 40% higher than the national average. Rising energy prices brought on by restricted use of affordable and domestic energy resources hit the poor, they hit the elderly, and they fix those on fixed incomes the most. It will be hard to explain this policy to those who rely on CalPERS and CalSTRS for their retirement and pensions as well. For these reasons, Mr. President, I ask members to vote no on SB 185.
Thank you, Senator Stone. Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of SB 185. You know, it's hard to believe we're even having this discussion today, especially after the previous bill that we discussed and talked about at length, and the fact that even our neighbors across the Pacific Ocean in China are divesting themselves of coal as their energy provider. I mean, California has steadily been moving away from coal in its energy policies because of coal's obvious many negative environmental externalities. I mean, it's just incredible the negative effect this has had on our environment. And it will continue if we don't make and take a leadership position in this. We lead by example, colleagues. We lead in California by example. The state has put significant effort and careful thought into developing technology and markets for renewable energy, and we're meeting those goals. And the community and the state is embracing that. And as a result, renewable prices have dropped dramatically. For the state to invest in coal is against the policies of this legislature and those that preceded us. This goal, this bill, looks forward by divesting ourselves of investments that take us backward. And for that reason, I urge your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Senator Morlock, and then Senator Morrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to rise in opposition to this bill for one particular reason, and that is that as an elected body, we should not be telling our pension systems what to do with their portfolios. Our chief investment officers are tasked with the job of investing for value, and we pay the CIO of CalPERS I believe, $800,000 a year for his brain power or her brain power to do that. So I was a little frustrated when we had another bill before us with regards to how Cal State University should invest their funds as well. And I asked a specific question from the senator from Sacramento County on what CalPERS was doing with Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia, which are incredible money managers, and they left CalPERS. They didn't want all the additional meddling that this body was providing. So with that, just two thoughts. We need a diversified portfolio, and commodities are part of that. And if it's an area where we can generate revenues for our retirees, we should let them earn those revenues. I'll tell you, if you want to force a portfolio of this size to liquidate, it'll be a fire sale. I can still remember a conversation I had with the treasurer of the state of Arizona, Tony West, back in 1995, and how glad he was that Orange County sold off their bond portfolio at the worst time, and how much money they made from that opportunity by buying our bonds and then selling them at profit. I think colleagues, this is area we should not be going. We should not be forcing investment decisions in our pension plans. We can certainly give advice, but we shouldn't be doing this. I encourage a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Morlock. Senator Morrell.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Thank you. As Vice Chair of Public Employment and Retirement Committee, I do rise in opposition to SB 185. The primary duty of CalPERS and STRS boards is to make sound investments that generate profits for their future retirees, and this bill, of course, weakens their ability to do so. It harms teachers, students, school districts, public employees, as well as their families. And the legislature, as some of my colleagues have said, should not be going down this path and implementing policy agendas. The Legislative Analyst's Office also estimates that unfunded liabilities a little under $400 billion, and it's a significant shortfall for CalPERS and CalSTRS. And so these commitments are so massive that they've already are crowding out some of our most basic government services that we rely on: schools, roads, police, fire protection, and other things. And so to force this increases administrative costs and tends to decrease investment returns for our retirees. We should not use people's retirements savings to target companies and industries that the legislature happens not to like. Plus, we're also telling businesses they're not welcome here in California. You know, President Drew Faust of Harvard noted that in general, divestment is likely to have little effect or financial impact on effective companies, and that it would be more productive to favor engagement over withdrawal. And so members, PERS and STRS, need to take steps to be solvent. I think SB 185 would inhibit their ability to do so, so I do encourage a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Morrell. Senator Fuller.
Members, I rise to respectfully oppose SB 185. The CalPERS and the CalSTRS retirement system is underfunded. It's in a vulnerable position. I think that we are very lucky that we haven't had a more severe recession, in which case have lost the ability of these pensions to fund themselves just to pay out. We are now at a place that I think I was last told that CalPERS was at about 88% funded. That's not 100%. That does not make any of our retirees who've worked their whole life and now they have nothing else to look forward to but their pension check. That does not make them feel safe. It does not make them feel that their future is secure. We promised them something when we gave them those pensions. We owe it to them to live up to that promise. Now, you know that I'm on the Rules Committee, and as part of the Rules Committee, we approve we interview and we approve or disapprove the candidates that are on these boards. The governor appoints them. I might mention it is a Democratic governor. And even though I'm a Republican, I have been amazed at the financial credibility, sense, expertise, education of these individuals that have come before us. And in good faith, after vetting out their qualifications, I have voted yes. for these people. And I have voted yes based on that they will keep the promise to our pensioners. They will keep the promise to the teachers who worked for me. They will keep the promise to those who gave their full life to a career, and this is all they have now. On the natural, I have to admit, and it's embarrassing to have to admit it, but on the natural, they probably will divest someday in energy sources. But I really object to telling these individuals that all their credentials from Harvard and other financial institutions of great merit around the world, that those, well, those aren't as important as what the legislature thinks today. Their investments are all very long-term. When I try to get them to tell me, okay, when do we make 7.5%? Is it like this 5 years? Is it next 7 years? How do I know that we actually are making the 7.5%? Are my teachers that retired under my supervision when I was last a superintendent, are they safe? Are they taken care of? How do I know that you're hitting your target? They say, no, it's a 20 or 30-year investment cycle, and it's going to be okay because it's a 20 or 30-year investment cycle. Well, if that's the case, and we ask them to abruptly terminate these long-term investments, we are going to lose money. And if we lose money, then we become more underfunded. And if we become more underfunded, we put our state employees at risk. I think on the natural, this board, I think they will do what they think is right. And I think eventually, if it is true that the investments become worth less, they will disinvest as the schedule allows them to pull out in a prudent, professional way. I ask you to leave the board that we set up, to leave the appointees that you have wished to be appointed. I urge them to let them have their way. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Fuller. Senator Allen?
I just rise to point out that there is a provision in here that provides that nothing in this bill shall require a board to take action unless the board determines in good faith that the action is consistent with the board's fiduciary responsibilities as described in the Constitution. So it does provide flexibility to the boards, and that makes me feel more comfortable supporting this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Allen. Senator De Leon, would you like to close?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much from the good senator from Santa Monica for pointing out that clause. Again, it just underscores that we've drafted a measure that is thoughtful, that has an off-ramp if the fiduciary agents, because at the end of the day, if you're part of the governance structure of both CalPERS and or both CalPERS and CalSTRS, obviously, first and foremost, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your clients. Your clients are who? Your clients are the pensioners, teachers, and other state workers in the state of California. Just to put this in context, because I think there's been perhaps a little drama, here. For CalPERS, the current holdings of coal is less than 1%. It is 0.000, that's 3 zeros. I'm going to follow still with 2 more digits, 57. Is 0.00057. That's the actual holdings that CalPERS have of thermal coal, companies in Wyoming and elsewhere. On the economic argument, to be specific, on the economic argument, obviously, I won't go into the environmental argument. We talked a lot about that in 350. But if you don't buy, again, the moral argument, then the economic argument is a reality. The reality is Credit Suisse rating agency just called our nation's largest coal companies in dire straits. It is a bad investment, and that value is dropping every single day. This is simply the right thing to do. Now, we have a fiduciary responsibility, obviously, to the pensioners, first and foremost, no doubt about it. This is the right bet. And again, in a very thoughtful manner, we've been engaging with the CIOs as well as the CEOs, as well as the members of the governance structure, not in a political way, but rather numbers and sense, looking over, algorithms and looking over the numbers. I gotta say, it's a safe bet. This may not even have to be statutory at the end of the day, but we'll be able to figure this out without moving the measure forward, because the end goal, obviously, is to invest in value that provides for the pensioners and to make sure we get out of companies that are right now, quite frankly, destroying our environment, impacting health impacts for our children in the state of California from the importation of their product. As was mentioned a few moments ago from the senator from the peninsula, obviously Peabody and Arch and others, folks from Wyoming, are trying to find new markets and emerging markets, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in South America, whether it's in China. But even the Chinese and the Politburo are figuring out soon that the health impacts are just too much for the Chinese to fuel their new power plants in China. This is the right thing to do. With that, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator De Leon. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Anderson? No. Bates? No. Bell? Aye. Berryhill? No. Block? Aye. Canella? No. De Leon? Aye. Fuller? No. Gaines?
No.
No. Gaggiani? Aye. Glazer? Aye. Hall? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Hernandez? Aye. Hertzberg? Hill? Aye. Wisso? Aye. Huff? No. Jackson? Aye. Lada? Leno? Leyva? Aye. Liu? Aye. McGuire? Aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mitchell? Aye. Monning? Aye. Morlock? No. Morrell? No. Wynn? No. Nielsen? Pan? Aye. Pavley? Roth? No. Runner? No. Stone? Vidak? No. Wachowski? Aye. Wolk? Wolk, aye.
Secretary, call the absent members.
Hertzberg? Lada? Leno? Nielsen? Pavley? Aye. Stone? No.
Ayes 22, noes 14, measure passes. Members will now move to file item 105. Senator Pavley, are you prepared to bring this up?